Difficulties in the prison. Difficulties arose within the prison. It had been our naive belief that these men who had been converted from Christ to Christ would feel like Michael and I and wished to teach the gospel to all whom they could. We believed it would be a straightforward task without too much difficulty, as they were without a lot of religious traditions to overcome. We were mistaken. It was not so, because we'd soon realised that there were many external religious volunteers who had already gone into the prison and founded groups of men, and these were teaching their version of the gospel. I also realised that what attracted most men was the amount of food and material help they were getting from the religious volunteers from outside. The problem was that if a prisoner did not do or toe the line, and do as the religious volunteers said or approved of, then they did not get the benefits of their goods. Consequently, if an RVO took dislike to you visiting another visiting RVO because you had a different belief or otherwise different doctrine you were teaching, they may disagree with you, then they've only got to have a word in the inmate's ear, and that would turn inmates against you. And this is what happened in the prison. This is what happened in New Vidigal prison against us. They didn't like our Calvinism, so-called. Now, there were also women religious volunteers, and I noticed that there were quite a lot of women there working in the prison. They call themselves pastoras, or some even elders. Now, historically, in that tradition, I'm told that Corrie ten Boom visited that prison in World War II, which was quite nice history. However, when I asked these men, these religious men, these men with the Bible Institute, to write an essay on the role of women in the church, they refused to do so, because they didn't want to upset the women religious volunteers. In fact, in the West, women elders were coming into church and so on. These men were afraid to upset the women. Now, the RVOs, these religious men, had fallen into the same trap as my church at Bearton, and also many of people in the UK. You see, they seem to think that they're more perfect if they abstain from certain things. They felt they could perfect themselves by not drinking, not smoking, not doing this, not dancing, not doing that, not doing the other, many things, not singing songs which are not Christian songs, not singing worldly songs, or mixing with sinners or anything like that. If they did these things and kept themselves from them, then they are in fact good Christians, and it was a good testimony to the world, which is not, it's nonsense, and is not what the gospel says. The Bible clearly says the testimony to the world should be that the world should see the love that they had one towards another, not see the gossip and the backbiting and the backstabbing that went on amongst them about other people in the jail. That's exactly what took place when we went to that prison. It's the old problem, right? The love of money, opposition to God's truth, jealousy, self-preservation, saving of faith, need of recognition, and gossip with a religious fervour that moved certain men to oppose our work. All of this is told in this book, my other book, which I wrote a diary. It is in fact really the daily diary of the Trojan Horse mission to the Philippines. Give you an example of what we're talking about. I went there, and in the prison there are people from all stratas of society, the low, the poor, the rich, and there was a certain VIP inmate. I don't know how many years he got, I don't recall his name, but he had privileges and had a Saturday night privilege. He had his family come to stay with him in the jail, and he had a celebration, and there was food and drink, and Michael and I were invited to that VIP's feast, the celebration. Now, in the prison, it is illegal to drink wine and alcohol. It's forbidden. But in this, where we were given Marianda food, the drink that I drank, I'm sure it was vodka. The trouble was, the very next day, rumour got round the prison that David Clark, the Reverend from England, is drinking wine and mixing with sinners in the prison. So talk and gossip went round the prison. You know, my Bible tells me when you have any food set before you, don't even ask questions about where it's from, just go ahead. Because all is clean and all is right, so I did. But the gossipers went and gossiped and tittle-tattled around the prison. Just one example. Another example I'll give you. Richard Gatwood. He was a man from London, former drug dealer, still in his sins, but I was sharing with him the gospel and encouraging him in the way of life. He came to see me that night, that one evening in New Billerud Prison, in Michael's office that we'd made in the prison. Michael had made it in the grounds of the New Billerud Prison Theological Institute. And I was sharing with him the things we were doing. And Richard came from his dormitory that night, late at night, with a big bottle of tuber, which is in fact brewed wine or alcohol in the prison, made from rye. So he brought it with him, and it's terrible stuff. I don't like it, but they drink it to get drunk. Well, we were talking till late, and I've written part of his testimony in the book, in Trojan Warriors, or in Before the Cock Crows. Read it. What happened was, the mayor of his dormitory sent word to the guards to get this man to come back to his dormitory. Now, when the guards came, knocked on the door, rattled on the cage where Michael's place was, Richard tipped the tuber away down the drain, and the trouble was it stank so much he didn't want to get found out with it. The trouble was there were other people there. There was the water carrier belonging to the institute, the NBPTI Theological Institute, and that water carrier gossiped, told people the next day that the Reverend David Clark was in the prison drinking, having a drinking spree with prisoners, with sinners in the jail, and that I was a drunkard, and I went away from that place smelling of tuber. Well, there's an example of gossip that goes on. The other thing was this. Lucas P. Dangatton was in communication, I'm not pleased about it, with my wife in England, and I thought he was helping. My wife, unfortunately, informed Lucas P. Gatton, telling him that I had left her and my daughter, and that word was then spread by Lucas to other people around the prison that I'd left my wife, my daughter, and now was selling the family home, and now I was mixing with prostitutes in the bars late at night. So the word got round the prison, evil tongues, gossiping, making trouble, causing trouble. And that's what happened in the Philippines. Word got round that I was a wine bibber, that I'd left my wife, and that this was to discredit myself and the work that we was doing.
The next chapter is chapter 10, called Rumours, Gossip, Betrayal and Forsaken.
Spirit of the Lord, come down, anoint me to proclaim the wonders of my God and King. Jesus is his name.